I think it's really, communities have become a sort of a buzzword in marketing and in publishing recently. And I've worked in publishing for over 20 years, and over the course of that time, my job, I've seen the job, publishing and marketing within it, change almost beyond recognition. So when I first started, mainly my job consisted of creating bits of paper to help the sales force go out and sell books to people, and putting up posters that people ran past and didn't really look at. And no one could track whether that was effective or anyone had seen it at all. And then the internet got invented and Amazon got launched. And suddenly, publishers went from being stuck in their ivory towers to actually being able to talk and listen, we don't do enough listening, to what readers were saying. And some of it we really didn't like. We don't like it when they go onto Amazon and criticise, you know, this should be much better edited as a book, that sort of thing. But generally, it's been a really exciting thing, because suddenly where we could only reach our readers by being really, really nice to Tesco's, now we don't, well, we still have to be a bit nice to them, but we can make a book happen without their help. We're no longer hidebound by somebody who's decided they only want to take 10 pink books with pink covers that month. Don't quote me on that. Obviously, Tesco have discerning buyers who know all about books inside. And so now we're obsessed with that idea. We're obsessed with this sort of myth that communities exist, that we can create communities. And there's a lot of pressure on publishing marketing departments now to be experts at social media and experts in creating communities. Actually, it's an incredibly hard thing to do. If you think about the community, when I asked you to put up your hands if you felt like you belonged to a community, you probably belong to more than one. And what do you mean by that anyway? Are you part of a community of people who like books, or who like a specific sort of a book, or who like to only read books on holiday? You know, there are all kinds of different mouldings of what that can mean. And one of the reasons that I became involved in the Greenwich Book Festival was because I'm part of a community, and because I started to chat to someone at the school gates, and I discovered that she was an arts journalist and that we both had a shared interest in publishing. And then we both sort of said, Greenwich would be a great place for a book festival, why isn't there one? And we sort of went, oh well, if, you know, maybe it'll happen one day and we should stay in touch, and that's great. And then through a whole other community, through my publishing community, I met Alex through a mutual friend who I used to work with, or I still do work with. And so through that community connection, then I came to talk to the students here, and afterwards we went for a beer, and I said, oh, we've been saying there should be a festival here, and he said, oh, we've been saying that too. And so accidentally, community made us start.
And I think because I come from a different type of understanding of the community. My general feeling as a writer, and to a certain extent as an academic, is that the community isn't adequate, right? One way or another. That's you lot. You're not adequate to the literature that we want to see produced, right? You won't like that, obviously. My feeling is that you need to be educated into a position where you start wanting more from your literature than whether it's got a pink cover, or whether you can read it comfortably on holiday, whether it's that fat, or whether it's got Harry Potter in it, or it's got someone who's a bit like Harry Potter in it. We kind of, as an educator and as a writer of roughly avant-gardist literature, my feeling is that we need to create communities, one way or another, that expect a little bit more is probably, well, that's what I mean, but I won't say it. It's different things, I think, from literary practice. So it's nice because Auriol comes from a completely different perspective. She comes from a publishing, getting the books out there perspective, and at least our side of it, I think, from the indie presses and to a certain extent from the academics, is to kind of bring material to the attention to people so they understand that there isn't just what you've roughly already had before. There might be other things that you aren't familiar with, that you may not like in the first instance, but you should feel that you ought to like. And other patronising type phrases like that you'll eventually have to be educated into finding unpatronising. So to a certain extent, I think there's a couple of things going on with the festival. It's both catering to the community, the local community, and the communities of readers that exist in London, and also trying to build new communities around particular ideas of what writing could be and is to a certain extent. So yeah, I think we work well together, and I think they're not mutually exclusive types of approach to looking at community, but they're certainly ones which have differences, I think.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we've learned was we've done 1 year of the festival, and so this will be our 2nd year, is that you can talk glibly about communities and about tapping into an existing community. It's incredibly hard, and I think it takes, many people have said to me, it takes at least 3 years to establish any kind of traction for something, and it's true, and people don't like to be told what to do.
They
Alex
don't.
needs to find some more subtle methods.
Possibly. Brainwashing, you mean?
And there's this idea that build it and they will come, and I really hope that that's true. But I think one of the reasons I wanted to be involved in the festival was because I'm employed by a corporate publisher, and I do my job. I absolutely believe that every book has a reader. Some of them only have one, but most of them have more than that. And most of the ones I work on have a lot more than that. But I very much do what I'm told, and then I have creative freedom within that, but I'm told this is our most important book this month. Whereas the appealing thing to me is to be involved in the festival is if I can get it past my co-directors, I have a little bit more say in shaping that list, and maybe I can get closer to your situation where you're actually curating a list and you can be very discerning about it. And finding that balance between being true to what you want something to be and creating something that's appealing enough that people will come to it is a very fine balance that we found. And I naively wanted to program lots of authors who I think are wonderful or who we think are wonderful and need to be discovered. And the truth is that people still didn't come and see them. So we had sold out events for all the predictable ones, and people didn't come to all the beautiful ones.
You see, I don't care about that.
He doesn't
because,
care.
I mean, my feeling is, it's like, I remember someone told me an anecdote about Buddhist Zen gardens, right? This would make much sense. But they have water wheels in them, okay, sometimes, and on the water wheel is a prayer, right? And the water rolls over the prayer, and the prayer wheel turns, and the water circulates through the garden with the prayer attached, right? So you can't tell. No one's going to tell. But or another one. There was a experiment in the Soviet Union in the 1960s and 70s to see whether roughly communities of people were telepathic, right? So what they try and do was give one group of people a very complicated piece of algebra to solve, okay? And then time, after that was solved, how long it took successive groups to solve that algebraic problem. And they worked out, anecdotally, because I can prove this if you ask me to, that after one community had solved that algebraic problem, the second community took less time, and the third took less time, and the fourth took less time. So eventually it took virtually no time to solve the algebraic problem, because somehow that information was communicated, that skill, that understanding, ability to approach things was communicated to the collective, one way or another. And I think even if your room isn't full, right? I mean, this room isn't full, but you'll all go into the world and populate it with knowledge in ways that we can't predict and wouldn't want to predict. And numbers is a funny game, and I don't think it's the kind of game that often you're obliged to play as a commercial publisher that I'm not obliged to have to worry about, I think, which is why we sometimes have interesting arguments over the timetabling and the booking of acts.
So we're going on for far too long.
Yeah.